County. Have a question or comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station at irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I'm Rick Schisler. I'm your host. I'm also a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of OneBestConsult.com. And welcome to this week's show. I think we have a lot of good conversation coming your way, and hopefully there'll be ideas and tips that you can use perhaps even today in your own business, because we're all about education here. We're here to teach you and share with you our experiences and knowledge, just like with our guest and OneBestConsult.com. We're coming to you today from the studios of Lone Star Community Radio. Lone Star is Montgomery County's nonprofit community radio station. This is the place where the community comes together and all aspects of it come together to talk about what's going on in Montgomery County particularly, but in the surrounding area, in our country, and sometimes around the world. So welcome. We want you to join us and be part of that conversation. My quick thought as we kind of kick off here is we're coming up on the time when a lot of employees take vacations. And if you've got one or more employees, you have to consider the impact of that vacation on your business. And I know all of us, as a former business owner, vacations could be a little bit difficult to deal with because we have key people. Everyone was key that worked for me, down to the guy that did the janitorial work. When they're off, then you got to fill that space or you got to do something else. My encouragement to you, be sure you sit down and do a little bit of planning. Whether you got 1 or 2 or 20 or obviously 200, make sure you have some kind of plan in mind when that person is scheduled to be off. Cross-training, another thing. I'm running into that more and more, and I think it's great that people are taking the time, making the investment in their business to cross-train their people to perform the other person's functions. If nothing else, you got a sick day come along, unexpected, but now we've got vacation, a week, 2 weeks. Somebody is there to fill in on the critical parts of that job for that individual who's off on vacation. Another idea that used to have, in my opinion and my recollection, a lot more interest was we'd shut the business down. I knew businesses that would shut down typically around the 4th of July for a week or 2 weeks. Everybody took their vacation. I actually bought a business where they shut down between Christmas and New Year's, and that was vacation. And to take a vacation otherwise was sort of frowned on. But some people had the day saved up, so they did. But it's an interesting approach. Don't see it as much as I used to see it, but it's a way for the company to fill the gap, so to speak. You're just not open. I'd love to hear from you currently what you're doing. I'd appreciate you dropping me an email, Rick, R-I-C-K, at irlonestar.com. That's Rick at irlonestar.com. And tell me what you do, what your company does to handle the vacation time of your people to keep that business up and running at top speed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I again appreciate you being here. We have a wonderful guest with us today. We're going to talk about how to grow your business through mergers, acquisitions, something that many small business people don't really think about, but I've known a number of them who do, and they acquired businesses or they merged, and it turned out to be a really, really good thing for them in most cases. So without further ado, let me introduce Mark Hofer. He's the managing director of Chapman Associates. They specialize, Mark does, in mergers and acquisitions. And again, I think it's a wonderful way to grow your business. So let's talk about it. Mark, what do you think?
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. I always love to talk about business, and there's always good stories to tell. So we can chat about business all day long. How should we start?
Well, give a little bit of background to our listeners so they
Okay.
know who you are a little bit, what you've done in business.
So I am a lifelong technologist and a lifelong entrepreneur. My dad was the classic father who always had a get-rich-quick scheme or some deal going on the side. Funnily enough, my dad also worked in mergers and acquisitions. He went out and found restaurant concepts and then sold those restaurant concepts to conglomerates that then took those individual restaurant concepts nationwide as a franchise operation. If you told me 20 years I was going to wind up in M&A, I probably would have laughed at you because I grew up in a house where my dad was gone all the time because it's a travel-related business. You go where the clients are. I originally started my career in the hospitality business. I worked with the Hyatt Corporation for several years. That was the first chunk of my big multinational corporate experience, which I have over 20 years of. I went from there into a tech startup in the late 1980s. There was no such thing. If you wanted to be a computer science major, it meant you were writing programs in either COBOL or Fortran at the time I went to college. So there was no concept of cybersecurity. There was no concept of business information technology or all that. It was all brand new stuff. The interesting opportunity there is that the vendors who were developing the technology had a lot of training courses at the time. And so even though I didn't go to college for anything technical, I was able to pick up an engineering certification through private training, which I then took to a software startup company, which was bought by a large multinational corporation. I then went from there to another software company startup that was bought by a large national corporation. The next startup that I worked for, and this is a really interesting story just by itself, they were I believe the number 3 medical practice management software at the time. They merged with the number 2 company and then bought the number 3 company. And then those 3 companies together felt that they had a better position to compete against a much larger market share that the number 1 company had. Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and this is something I've said for years, any organizational change is going to cause turnover. Good, bad, or indifferent, an organizational change will cause turnover. Someone's not going to like what happened. With that particular merger, one of the companies we bought had a much larger IT shop centralized on the East Coast, so we were all pretty sure that we were out of a job or we'd have to move to the East Coast. So I then moved to yet another software startup that got bought by yet another large multinational company. I then spent almost 20 years with that company. We did corporate mergers and acquisitions. I was involved in over 35 mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, breakups, sell-offs, whatever you want to call them, but from the corporate level. So it was a team game. It was me and 25 or 30 other professionals and lawyers, go buy this software company and take it over. And so then that came in with a lot of experience in the post-merger and acquisition integration. It's funny, when 2 companies merge, they will very quickly combine their marketing and sales organization and their billing and accounting organization to make themselves look like one company. Getting the operations of those 2 companies working together can take years. So it's very interesting that there's a sort of public perception that the merger happened and it was over, but then there's all this other stuff that goes on in the background. So from there, I have done entrepreneurial ventures my entire life, whether it was selling on eBay or some of my more current entrepreneurial ventures. But sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. So for mergers and acquisitions, I was laid off from my corporate job last year, which was completely unexpected. But the good news that came out of that is I was able to gain control of my corporate retirement funds, which I then used to start my business. So I went from thinking and dabbling in entrepreneurial ventures for years to you're going to go all in and basically bet your retirement savings on whether or not you can start a successful business and move forward. That's where I am today. I am a one-man mergers and acquisitions firm. My company is Hofer and Associates M&A Houston, which is a member of Chapman Associates. All members of Chapman Associates are called managing directors, but we're an association of mergers and acquisition specialists that work and collaborate together to help entrepreneurs buy and sell their companies. So that's me in a nutshell. Lots of experience, lots of stories. We can talk about big corporate environments and what big corporate environments do. We can talk about the one-person entrepreneur. One of my current projects is working on content around what does it take to start a business. I originally wrote an article for Can You Start a Business for No Money? And the short answer is no, you can't. But you can start a business for very little money, especially if you go with the concept of if I can start revenue generation fairly quickly, then I can cover the rest of my startup costs with the revenue that the business is producing. Much easier said than done. Lots of challenges, lots of war stories to tell there as well.
Well,
So I'll stop there.
Kind of move the direction. Of course, our listeners are primarily not big corporate types. They're business owners and small businesses who could have 1 to 200 employees. Hopefully, a lot of them are here in Montgomery County, which is true. And Harris County is our second largest market for what we talk about, and then the rest of the country, and a few folks, believe it or not, around the world. Since we come out over the internet, you can count where people are coming from. So it's kind of interesting, but you've had just a tremendous amount of experience growing up in a home like I did that was in business. I had experiences that very few people get as far as running a business and so on and so forth. But to get back to what we're talking about today, I'm a small business guy. Say I'm doing $1 million, $5 million a year in sales, and I want to grow. I've got 3 or 4 competitors in the market that I serve in the general products or service lines that the opportunity for small businesses to potentially go out and merge their business, like you discussed about the number 1, the number 2, 3 merge, and that all makes sense. We all seen the articles and experienced perhaps owning stock in companies that did that. But the small business person, does the merger of my small business, just in general, does it make sense for me to pursue that as a growth goal?
It is one way to grow your business. It is not for everybody. It is a very personal business. Entrepreneurs, to an entrepreneur, their business is their baby. It's their child. They have a lot emotionally invested in it. And so when you start talking about, I want to give up or share some of the control of that business, you will very often immediately get some sort of emotional response out of a person. It's not something that someone wakes up in the morning and goes, hey, I think I'm going to go, buy out half of my competitor's company tomorrow. But if you do have that thought, please give me a call. I'd love to help you out. But really, when it comes to mergers is a very wide open term. Traditionally, it usually meant that one company bought part of a company or the 2 companies combined together. We, in this day and age, do a lot of joint venture agreements, which I also call a merger. So it could be project-based. You could be developing or expanding a new product or diversifying a new product. It's sometimes much easier for 2 businesses to combine together because if 2 smaller businesses are in the same market and neither of them really has enough of the market share to be self-sufficient by themselves. By combining together, then they would lower their competition, they would lower their operational costs, and usually that is a large boost to the business itself. Anything you can do to increase efficiency is always going to be a bonus.
Yeah, let's back up on that a little bit, because I tend to want to simplify things and then build from that. In your opinion, I think I already know the first one, which is that entrepreneurial control, I call it, which is a stumbling block in many ways for businesses trying to grow. But what, in your opinion, are the 3 most important issues that a business needs to consider, a small business needs to consider if they want to merge their business? I mean, entrepreneurial control, I'm sure that's right in there.
Entrepreneurial control.
What are a couple of others off the top of your head?
Who's the boss and who makes the decision is always going to be the biggest one. Someone has to have at least 51% of the interest in the control of the company. And that's negotiable. It's always negotiable. Other things to consider are legal environment is always a big one. We see a lot of proposed business agreements where, for example, one side will hold, side A will hold side B harmless, but side B will not hold A harmless. Me personally, that's called an indemnity clause. Indemnity, in my opinion, should always be a two-way street. If you're saying if something goes wrong, I'm not going to sue you. If the other person doesn't say that back, that is a huge red flag and an indicator that someone is trying to put you in a situation where they can take advantage of you or rip you off at a later date. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I've worked with lawyers for years. I've read contracts for a living for years. I did technical contracts where I covered the technical side of it and the lawyers did the law side of it. But you absolutely want proper legal representation to help you. And it's really more not damage control, but mistake control. How do you avoid the mistakes before they happen? How are the legal instruments set up in a way that produce the least amount of risk for you and your business? On top of that, it's always going to be financials. How is the integration going to look like if the two businesses combine together? For example, if let's use an example, say two hamburger joints combine together. Are they going to combine together in one restaurant? Are they going to put one on the north side of town, one on the south side of town? Are they going to completely mothball one brand and put all of their effort into the other brand? All of that, any integration that is going to happen after the merger happens needs to be planned for proactively, needs to be planned up front. The people that go in and say, hey, we're just going to merge the business and we'll figure out the rest of it later, those are the ones that wind up in the far more unexpected problems, lawsuits, and who knows what else.
Well, and you bring up a great point there. It's a question I ask is, what is this going to look like when we're done? Mm-hmm. And I use that in a variety of situations. But to me, when you merge your business with another, that's just a really important question to iron out beyond just the personal feelings of, well, I'm in charge, who's in charge, who does, but just really what is this going to look like? Mm-hmm. So then you can evaluate, right? Is it worth it? In other words, is there value there for me to merge my business with someone else? Hamburger place on the north and the south, what does that do? Does that help? Does that expand the brand? Those kind of things. Let me ask you, and you've had all this wide experience doing mergers and acquisitions. You've seen, I'm sure you've talked about many more during the length of your career. What is the leading cause of a merger failing, particularly if you have that small business? What is the reason that these companies come together and then somewhere down the road, usually it's fairly quick, a year or two, it fails?
Right.
What is the leading cause?
The first one would be poor planning, without a doubt. Unexpected, and I guess the second one would be unexpected challenges that you don't plan for. And I guess those two go closely together. But if you're not planning, you need to have that sort of kitty aside where you have a little extra money to help you cover those unexpected things when they happen. The other thing that's the biggest business killer that I've seen is lawsuits. Two people enter into agreement. The legal language wasn't clear enough, and 6 months later they get into an argument about something and the whole thing falls apart. So again, it's really all about due diligence and planning. And if you don't do the research and, like you said, what is it going to look like when we're done? The other two questions I'll throw in there is, if I'm putting money into this, what specifically am I getting for that money? And then the other one is, what does the definition of success look like? I'm a really big fan of what we call metrics and measurements. Unfortunately, in this day and age with the websites and internet marketing, you have a lot more of that type of information available to you. But, is our goal by merging these two businesses, we're going to increase our overall sales by 30% and drop our operating costs by 20%. You now have set goals that you can measure on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So you can say, yes, we're making progress in meeting those goals, and no, we are not making progress, so we're not meeting those goals. To your point, if the business fails, it should never be a surprise to you. But for many people, it is. I don't remember the exact number, but it was like something like 75% of small businesses that experience some sort of natural disaster or unexpected event never open their doors again.
No, it's
So,
way up there.
yeah. So right here in Montgomery County, just last week, with seeing businesses with floodwaters in them that have never had floodwater in them before. You know, they may have had water up to the back step, but there wasn't 2 feet of water in the kitchen. So I know there's a lot of businesses in this area hurting right now just because of the amount of rainfall we've gotten in the last 2 months.
Well, they won't come back, and that's kind of an interesting thing. In fact, there was a good article over the weekend about restaurants, particularly in this area, that have gone out, not because of the flood necessarily, but just over the last year or two, COVID and whatnot. And all of them were a surprise to people, their patrons. I mean, it just happens, and it was exploring why and what's behind it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break now. And when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation with Mark, talk about acquisitions, using acquisitions as a growth tool, and some other topics that I think you'll find interesting and useful. So please stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5 and 106.1 and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
Path to the Plate is a research-based education program that helps consumers understand how their food choices impact their health by making the connection to agriculture. Learning about how food is grown and produced, and how consumers can make better food choices for themselves and their families, Path to the Plate is all about dispelling myths and misconceptions. Find out more online at pathtotheplate.tamu.edu. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Hey y'all, it's DJ Mike from Dance Time in Texas. Join me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. as I count down the top 10 Texas Red Dirt songs that are packing the dance floor. I'll be featuring local artists and the story behind the hits, shows in the area, as well as new songs that make you want to dance. It's Dance Time in Texas with DJ Mike on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 KCZW and 106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. And in our studio today, we're very thankful to have Mark Hofer. He's the managing director of Chapman Associates. He's in business for himself. He's an entrepreneur, though. And we're discussing no mergers and acquisitions because Mark has a wonderful, long background and experience in that area. And before we get back in our conversation, I want to remind you, if you have a thought about what we're talking about, you have a question, you have a personal business challenge, send me an email. It's rick@irlonestar.com. I respond to every email I get, and on occasion, we bring your question to the show in our mailbag segment. So please reach out to rick@irlonestar.com. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us how you're doing. Whatever you'd like to talk about, I'm here to do that. Well, Mark, when we went to break, we were talking about mergers. In my estimation and limited experience I have, they're a difficult way for a small business to grow. The joint venture route, though, is definitely, you see that and taking on a particular project and going together on it, and then you part company after you hopefully have successfully completed it. But let's talk about acquisitions. I have seen that happen with a great deal of success in many cases, is going out and buying a competitor or a similar business, whatever your goal is. What is the right time in your experience for a business to consider that?
That's a great question. And again, it's a very personal thing. There's lots of things that could be the catalyst for that. Slow growth, no growth, changing market, changing competitors. Again, if you're watching and planning and measuring what your business does and operates, you can then plan ahead for that. So we usually go with some sort of roadmap planning. Our firm, for the most part, we will have a relationship with a potential client that will last anywhere from 6 months to 3 years before they make the decision. So, and then it can happen for numerous different reasons. You have the buy side, you have the sell side. People sell their businesses for many different reasons. People buy businesses for many different reasons, but it is absolutely unique to the individual business itself. And you need to work with an intermediary that knows your business, knows you, knows your likes and dislikes before you make that decision, because that will help you do it in the most confidential and risk-free way possible.
You know, I agree with you 100%, because we've had people on the show that work with people when they want to sell their business particularly. And the idea, they're another professional that if you're in the mode of acquiring or selling your business, you need a lawyer, you need an accountant or a CPA for the tax aspect. But you also, it's so helpful because it's typically a one-off. That's once and only time I'm going to sell my business or I'm going to acquire business. Now there are folks that are serial acquirers and they buy business, build them up and sell them. I'll raise my hand to that one because that's what we did. But the idea is to get that advice from a professional to walk them through. They maximize their returns. They'll leave money on the table if they try to do it themselves most of the time.
That's one of our big rules, is never leave money on the table. So, for example, what if someone's buying your business and your insurance company required you to have a life insurance policy for that business? Can you then sell that life insurance policy and make a little money on the side? You know, those are the types of money that gets left on the table. Or people will say, you know, we want your 2 most successful products, but we don't want your other 3 products. So then what happens with those other 3 products? Is there someone else that they could be sold off to? I'm reminded, my favorite story in the acquisition field, and I came across this completely by accident. I was working as an IT engineer at the time, and what we were doing was building networks that tied businesses together. This was a small mom and pop pool service company. They not only sold the pool chemicals retail to people who own pools, but then they also sold the proprietary equipment that makes and maintains pools to the companies that maintain them. They bought out their competitor in their local area, doubled their business, and then used the revenue from that to buy the pool company in the next town, and then the next town, and then the next town. Over a 5-year period, they bought 25, I believe it was, different mom and pop pool companies, and now are one of the largest pool distributors in the southeastern United States. So that's probably the best way to describe a serial acquirer, where you're continuing to make more money, continuing to build up, and then use that to make the next acquisition. When I describe myself as a serial entrepreneur, the joke is serial entrepreneur means I have started several entrepreneurial businesses and not one of them has made enough money for me to focus my entire career on yet. So there's lots of different ways to do it. But business, and I think this goes more to our conversation, there's really a lot of trial and error involved. And before that trial and error happens, you want to develop relationships and partnerships with the right group of people, whether they are family, friends, coworkers, partners, even competitors. Talk to the bankers in the area, find out what they're talking about. One thing I'm reminded of right now of what's going on in Montgomery County is I believe the city of Montgomery itself has gone from 2 coffee shops to 6, with number 7 opening, and the next month. So what really pops into my brain there is, if you're getting ready to open up a retail business, how much competition do you have now? Do you have 3 competitors that are also planning to move into the market at the same time that you are? That's really good stuff to know before you, start that business up.
It's funny, you picked Montgomery, the city of Montgomery here in Montgomery County, as an example because, our family lives there. But I'm seeing that in a lot of different retail businesses. One car wash shows up and then there's another one. And I'm saying, how many car washes can this area support? I mean, there's a lot of raw land for residential and other, but it's not there today. And how long are you going to, ride that out? So that's an interesting challenge. Well, let me ask you the what I call the golden bell question, that what are the keys to making a successful acquisition? I want to grow my business. I'm growing organically. I'm growing through my marketing efforts outside. but I really feel I can do an acquisition. The market is, say right now, there are businesses that are hurting because of the lack of cash, whatnot, or you have the baby boomers selling their businesses by the thousands. What are the keys for me to keep in mind so I can successfully acquire one or more businesses?
Right. The first one that comes to mind is don't go too big. The rule that we usually play by is you don't want to buy a company that is more than 30 to 50% of what you currently own. So they call that fractional growth. The reason for that is if you put too much money in and invest too much in too big of an option, then you are also taking risk. So if the unexpected comes along, you may not be able to afford to recover from that unexpected problem when it comes up. This is also another type of merger that we're seeing quite a bit these days, especially in high demand areas like technology. Financial technology is another one. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there doing payment processing. IT services is a really good model for local businesses because they support the other local businesses. But therein, they may not be able to afford to acquire. So that's, again, if the company you want to acquire, your biggest competitor, is as big or bigger than you are, it may take you and a partner working together to be able to afford that acquisition and not acquire a level of risk that you can't afford or are not able to then accommodate.
It's funny. I'm listening to you, and I got this image in my head of taking too big of a bite of the sandwich. And I actually had a client one time that I was working with, and he did that. He was basically a solo. He was making good money. He had been doing it for a number of years, had excellent financials, but he felt like he wanted to extend the business into a similar area but different. But it required taking on some debt because the AR, financing that, line of credit, and so on and so forth. And I told him, I said, "Are you sure?" Because that was not what he was used to. That was not his background. And sure enough, he went ahead and did it with a partner who was in the business. And then within a year, we ended up unraveling it. The good news is he didn't lose any money, and he was blessed that he was able to get dollar for dollar back. But he was already to the next deal, but it was the idea of, in his case, of owing that much money that it kept going up because they sold and grew. I mean, they were ahead of their projections on sales. Normally, on its face, this is great, but it didn't work for him. And that's something I always try to tell people: your personality, what it is your family needs. I talk about that in all aspects of business ownership. And then that was a good example of where his personality just didn't work in that field. So he went back to doing what he did very well and, enjoying his life again.
Yeah.
So,
and again, that's why I keep going back to relationship building. If you don't know the people you're in business with, you are destined to be surprised by something. So if I'm going to enter into a business agreement with someone, it's usually someone I know personally. It's someone I trust. It's someone that I've been, talking about business with for a long time. But then again, seek professional help. What does the lawyer say? What does the CPA say? One of my crazy side entrepreneurial things was to start up a t-shirt company. I figured it's an election year. There's a lot of political humor going around, so let's make fun of politics and sell funny t-shirts. So I basically made the assumption I'm going to take my 20 years of technical expertise and become an apparel designer. I'm not an apparel designer. I don't have any training in apparel design. And I very quickly found some things out. One, nobody liked my t-shirts. So I'm now in the process of rebranding and remarketing and trying to figure out what resonates with people. But again, planning, talking, getting to know your people, build those relationships. You do not want to enter into business with a complete and total stranger. Although there are tons of private equity and venture capital people out there, they are largely control freaks. They are very difficult to negotiate with. And most of them come with a very sort of arrogant, if you want my money, you have to play by my rules. The vast majority of entrepreneurs I know will not make that decision. So where does the money come from? Are you borrowing the money? What's the interest rate? If someone's giving you the money, what are they expecting back from it? What do you owe them? That's all stuff that has to be ironed out before the deal is inked.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it. That's wise and well-placed advice to people. Well, as we wrap up this conversation today, which I've thoroughly enjoyed, you, in our conversation prior to going on the air today, emphasized that you're an entrepreneur, and you've given examples of that. What, in your opinion now, after all these years of being an entrepreneur, would you tell someone who is interested in going out and starting a business, what would be the most important key to their success?
Real simple. It's more difficult than you think, and it always takes more time than you think. But the other flip side of that is if you are successful, it is the most rewarding feeling you will ever have in the world to say, I created this business and it is now paying my mortgage and my bills. It's that success, that dream of success, call it the American dream really, because it is. It's just the greatest thing in the world. But if you don't plan for the unexpected and if you don't plan ahead, that's going to be where you wind up in trouble.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very good point. Mark, I can't thank you enough for coming in and sharing
My pleasure.
your wisdom and experience, and hopefully down the road you'll join us again and we'll catch up. In the meantime, if people want to reach out to you directly to talk to you about what we talked about today, or perhaps talk to you about representing or working with them on their acquisition or merger, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
The easiest way is to go to the company website, which is chapman-usa.com. I am local here to Montgomery County. When you go to the website, it will talk about the corporate office being in the Chicago area. I am technically Chapman and Associates Houston. So although we really don't have territories, of course, one of my main bread and butter aspects of my job is serving businesses in the local community. So I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. You can meet me at the Chamber of Commerce meetings. Reach out to me through the website. Find me on LinkedIn. Contact me any way you want. I love to talk business. I love to share stories. One of the interesting things about getting the corporate out of the corporate environment is the corporate environment took care of my mentoring, my giving back to the community, and all that kind of stuff. Now that I'm on my own for doing that, I've really enjoyed getting out into the chamber meetings and going to the mixers and really talking and learning about every other business that's in the area and what they do and what makes it tick. One, because it's part of my job, but two, as an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs like talking about business. So have a conversation, call me up. You don't even have to be thinking about merging or buying or selling. Let's just have a conversation and talk about where you are and where you want to be in 3 to 5 years.
Sounds fair enough to me, and I encourage you, again, reach out. Many times as entrepreneurs or small business owners, we kind of put our head down. And I'm a big proponent of the chamber is a must-do for any business and make those connections. So it's very important. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our final break of the day here shortly. But before I do, I want to remind you that a video podcast of this program will be available on Wednesday of this week. So you can find it in many, many places. You can go to our page on YouTube, Facebook, and or you can come right here to the Lone Star Community Radio's website at irlonestar.com. Click on the program tab and the morning programs, and you'll see us, and you'll be able to listen to this as well as past shows are all available there. And please, if you have an opportunity, pass it on to one of your friends that's in business. This is the way we get new listeners, and your help would be deeply appreciated.
Like, share, and repost.
There you go. In the second half of the show, I'm going to give you my One Best Consult tip of the week, which is entitled, What Are the Benefits of Effective Workplace Communication? So please think about that, and we'll be right back with you.
Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question, comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station on irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
Second Saturday Divorce Workshop provides unbiased information to help you understand your options and move forward with your life. This divorce workshop is for you if you are contemplating divorce, in the process of divorce, already filed for divorce, or post-divorce. You will explore the emotional, legal, and financial aspects of divorce from professionals who have guided others through divorce. For more information on this divorce workshop, contact SecondSaturdayWoodlands.com or call 832-375-0900.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. We've got a few minutes left in today's program, and I want to touch on something, and we'll pick it up again next week as well. Effective workplace communication. Now, I heard that yawn out there, right? It's the big yawn. Yeah, we communicate in my business. It's a given, right? But effective communication, there are some things, some tips and some ideas, and I'm going to share a few of them with you that I've run across, and I think they're very effective. And in most of them, I tried and put them in place and taught others to use them. The first thing about effective communication versus just plain old communication, hey, bud, we're over here, or you need to do this, or clean that up. Effective communication does something very important. It helps build trust between you and your employees. And that is such a critical element, in my opinion, of a successful business. There has to be a really high level, preferably, of trust between you and the employee. I've got your back, you got my back. And effective communication on all topics and all situations can help you get there. Another area is when you effectively communicate and bring people into the conversation, so to speak, you will increase your team member engagement. It's so important because you want people to give you information, to volunteer ideas, to feel like they're on the team and they're allowed to bring up suggestions. Go into a successful business and see if that's going on in that business. You will find that almost every successful business has that two-way conversation going. And last but not least is effective communication helps build productivity. It's so important. Productivity is a must. We all know that, but it is a very, very important element in running a successful business. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the program today, and thanks to Mark Hofer for coming. And I will be back with you next week.